Welcome to Momtroversial Podcast, the podcast that dives headfirst into the beautiful chaos of motherhood and dishes on the stuff we wish we would have known and nobody tells you. I'm Leah, a scrunchy nurse writing the Hot Mess Express, and I'm your girl's girl here to remind you that it's fine, we're fine, and everything is fine. And today I am missing my two co-hosts, Alyssa, our crunchy mom, who is all about organic living, organized, opinionated, and a designated woman in any parenting bar fight. And Tori, the ride or die mom of three, who will hold your baby and your secrets. Today, Tori and Alyssa are both traveling, so it is just me that you guys get today. And we are going to be continuing on our series where we are talking about birth stories. So last week, if you missed out, you should go check it out. Tori shared a brief overview of her first two, and then she shared in depth her birth story with her youngest, Charlie, and just what a wild experience that was for her. And then this week, I am going to share my birth story with my youngest, Ella. And then I shared my birth story with my son, Declan. He's my oldest. And then today we're going to talk about my birth story for Ella Girl. Ella Girl was a wild ride. So let's get into it. First and foremost, I want to go ahead and just do disclaimer that I'm not going to be giving any medical advice in this episode. And also, I want to do a little bit of a trigger warning because Ella's birth was a little traumatic for me, but not in the way that Charlie's birth was for Tori. Mine was just a little bit different. And so in case anyone has any sensitivity to any of that stuff, I am going to be pretty detailed with y'all, sharing everything that I walked through when I was in labor with Ella. And so I just wanted to put forewarning out there for y'all. So let's get started. Ella, I went into labor with her when I was 40 weeks exactly. And to this day, I still am not convinced she was born when I was 40 and 1. I'm convinced she was born when I was on my due date because I got pregnant with Ella while we still lived in America. And so my American due date was August 15th. But then we moved to South Korea when I was in my third trimester. This was where we got stationed. And South Korea is 14 hours ahead of Central Time Zone, which is where we were in the States. So if you were to calculate when Ella was born at 4:30 in the morning on August 16th, technically that would have been 2:30 in the afternoon on August 15th in the States. So although she was born at 41 per Korea time, I say she was born on my due date because if I'd still been in America, like when I got pregnant, then and my due date was given to me, then she would have been born on her due date. One thing that is interesting that I want to share too for my recurring mamas out there is Ella was actually born later than Declan was. I went into labor with him when I was 39 weeks and 3 days. And I didn't go into labor with Ella until my due date. And I was so anxious. It's a real thing. When I was around the time that Declan was born and I hadn't gone into labor with Ella yet, I was very, very antsy. But I had a wonderful midwife, and she gave me a bunch of different stretches to do. One resource that I recommend to everybody is spinningbabies.com. Just in general, that's the nurse in me background for things that you can do to help get labor started or to get your body ready for labor. But my midwife, Diana, gave me a ton of stretches to do at home because I was pretty anxious, and high levels of cortisol actually will stall labor or prevent labor. So that's probably why it also took a little bit longer for me to go into labor with her. I went into labor with her. It started in the morning, and I just kind of knew that day that this was it. And I was in my feels all day because I was going from my one and only, my Ducky, to I was gonna have another baby. And I was in my feels. My contractions started off, they were very irregular. They were every 20 to 30 minutes. But I knew that I was starting labor because it was the same exact feeling that I had with Declan. And I'll describe it again if this is the first episode you're tuning into. Some women say that they feel labor in their stomach or their back. I felt everything in my pelvis. And the way that contractions feel to me personally, not to scare anyone, the best way I can explain it is if you're taking like a fine point pencil or pen like this, or a knife, and you were like slowly pushing into the center of my pelvis and then releasing, and then slowly pushing and releasing. That's what contractions feel like to me. I don't feel it in my back. I don't feel it in my stomach. I only feel it in my pelvis. And that was with both of my kids. And when I started experiencing that early in the morning, I would say about 8 or 9, I knew that today or tomorrow was gonna be the day. Now the nurse in me knows that just because I was starting to contract, that I didn't necessarily need to do anything about it then, because there are different stages of labor. And if you missed out on our labor and delivery Q&A episode, you should go back and listen to that, because I go over the different stages. And the latent stage of labor is the longest stage of labor. So I knew even though I was contracting, I wasn't really worried, because they were 20 to 30 minutes apart, which is nothing. I have much longer to go. And so I just went about my day, and I'd already packed my hospital bag like 37 weeks, because one of the things when Declan was born was we were not prepared. When Declan was born, we had nothing packed. So we had already had the car seat installed and packed the extra bag. So we were ready. Therefore I just went about my day normal. I was super intentional about my time with Dee and being one-on-one with him and just loving on him. And then I started to get uncomfortable around the evening time, about 5 p.m., I would say. But thankfully, I had already had a prenatal massage scheduled that day for around 5:45-ish. 10 out of 10 would recommend prenatal massages in your third trimester. 32 weeks, 36 weeks, and then anywhere around your due date, because it is so good at relaxing your muscles and releasing any of the excess tension you may be walking around with. So I went and got this prenatal massage, and I kid you not, my contractions stopped, or it felt like they stopped. It was phenomenal. So then we were at this crossroads where I knew that it wasn't done. I still knew that they were going to come back and I was going to have a baby. And so we were at this point where Travis and I were trying to decide. We had just moved to Korea, and the only people we had found to watch Declan that at the time I felt comfortable with lived about 30 to 45 minutes away, and we had to drive him there and take him and drop him off. Looking back now, I know that we had so many wonderful people in our neighborhood who I could have called and they would have just come over. But back then, I didn't feel comfortable with that because I didn't know the women here well enough. And so in my head, after that prenatal massage, Travis and I were talking about my contractions. He was like, "How are you feeling? Should we take Declan? Or do you think, we can make it through the night?" And I was like, my contractions have spaced out, so I think that we could probably go ahead and do one more bedtime, put him down, take him over there in the morning. I think we'll be good. And the reason why I felt that way, even though my gut instinct was telling me that we needed to take him and drop him off, but the mom heart in me was just craving one more bedtime. One more bedtime with just me and you. One more bedtime where you're my only baby. And it still makes me get sentimental thinking about it, even though Declan and I will love each other now. But in that moment, reflecting on those feelings, they were so strong because although it was my due date, I just was so emotionally not prepared to go from the 1 to 2, because my postpartum experience with Declan and the relationship I have with him, it was so hard. And so he was my everything, And so I made the decision of I wanted one more bedtime. So we did one more bedtime routine and put him down at home. And he goes down between 7 and 7:30. And then, of course, sure enough, around 9:30, I started contracting again. Of course, right? 2 hours after we put Declan down, I started contracting again. But I had texted my midwives and my doula, and I was in contact with them during the day and had just let them know. But these contractions were I wouldn't say irregular, but they were, 5 to 8 minutes or sometimes 8 to 10 minutes apart. They weren't super close together, but they were happening regularly. And they were uncomfortable enough that your girl couldn't go to sleep. No matter what position I was in, I couldn't get comfortable and go to sleep. And so, one thing that I did differently this time was I woke Travis up. When I was in labor with Declan, I had tried to do it by myself, and Travis was sleeping. I didn't want to wake him up, but this time I woke him up and I said, "Babe, I'm contracting. I can't sleep. I'm uncomfortable. I need your help." And so Travis was like, "Okay, yep, let's get up." And we got up and he sat with me in the living room and we watched some shows while I sat on the birthing ball. I kind of alternated between the birthing ball and the couch. And one thing which I really recommend, my neighbor Paige had gotten me this wooden comb, and I was holding the comb in my hands through contractions and squeezing it. Because one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that your body only has so many sensory receptors in it. So you can only take in so much stimulation at one time. And so, for two reasons, the comb was really good to use when I was contracting. One is because it was giving my sensory receptors some other input to have to take in. So that way I wasn't solely focused on what I was feeling with the contractions. Two, there's acupressure. And if you do some research into acupressure, it's actually really fascinating how you have certain pressure points on your body that affect other pressure points. One of which is the base of your hand right here. This affects your pelvis and your hips. And so when you're squeezing a comb like that, not only are you going ahead and giving yourself those extra sensory inputs to distract from the contractions, but you're also using acupressure to help relax your pelvis without realizing it, to allow your body to do what it's doing. So I was contracting like this for a couple hours, and the whole time I was fine. Like I said, it just felt like the pushing slowly on and then slowly off. I was managing them fine. I wasn't making any noise. I was totally responsive, coherent, normal in between. And in my head, because I was so controlled, it's about midnight now, midnight, 1 a.m. And Travis and I are checking in with each other. Should we go in? Should we wake D? Should we not? The whole time that I was laboring, I just kept thinking about the mom heart in me did not want to have to disrupt Declan's routine if we didn't have to, because he has always been my more reserved child. And I love that about him. It reminds me of his dad. And I was so scared to disrupt his routine, to go drop him off at somebody's house who he knows, but he's not super familiar with. We've only been in Korea for a month or two. My heart was just hurting at what that would be like for him to then us come home and there's another baby there, right? So when we were evaluating and checking in, it was about 12:30 or 1, and I told Travis, I think I can make it till like 5 or 6. I think I can make it till 5 or 6. We can just wake him up a little bit earlier than normal, drop him off, go to the hospital. We'll be fine. And I truly felt that at the time. And because I just really didn't want to disturb him. I had already had all his stuff packed and he was ready to go regardless. But yeah. And we had no family support like that, anything here. And that's one of the hard things about being military, especially when it comes to having kids, that a lot of civilians, and when I say civilians, I mean non-military people, don't understand, is things like that, like giving birth. My mom doesn't live down the street. His mom doesn't live down the street. We don't have necessarily people down the street who we can just call to come over. It is, you have to figure it out. And we thankfully, God provided, and we had somebody to watch our son, but it wasn't people who you're the most comfortable with in the entire world, because it's fresh relationships, the same with your kid. But Dave and Alexa were phenomenal. And I doubt that they listen to this, but I love you guys so much. And they were such freaking troopers when it came to taking care of our baby while we had our other baby. And I'm so eternally grateful for them. The way we met this couple was we met them at church our second Sunday in South Korea. And South Korea's military base, for people who don't know, is primarily Army or Air Force branches. My husband, Travis, is in the Navy, which every time we tell people that we're here, they're like, wait, what? Why is Navy here? And what's really ironic is we met Dave and Alexa at church our second week of being here. And Dave was also Navy. He was just stationed at the base that was 45 minutes north of us. And she saw my belly. And Alexa was like, oh my gosh, what do you do? And this was like June. I said, August. And she said, oh my gosh, I will watch your son for you whenever you go into labor. You just let me know. I got you. When they had moved to South Korea, she was in her third trimester as well. And already had a son and was having her second baby and was in the same situation we were, where you're trying to figure out what are you going to do with your kid while you have another kid. And it's just super anxiety breathing. And Alexa said, I know how you feel right now. I just want you to know, like, we will watch him. Don't even worry. And Dave and Alexa were fantastic. And so we hung out with them several times between then and when we hung out with them several times between then and when Ella was born. And so Declan knew their sons and he played with their sons, and we love Dave and Alexa. We got along with them really well. So we love them. But I share that to say, you know, regular people who aren't military don't have to rely on fresh friendships for help. They usually have long-term friendships, relationships, or family nearby for help. And they don't end up in situations like this. This is like such a military thing. And anywho, back to the story. Finally, I would say it was about 1:30 after that check-in. I had started getting a little bit more uncomfortable. My contractions were now like every 5 minutes. And I told Travis, I think I need to get in the bathtub or the shower. Reflecting back, this was the point that I should have said, we need to get Declan and take him to Dave and Alexa's. But again, the mom heart in me, so sensitive towards my child, was just so scared to disrupt his routine and scar him. And so I just wanted to let him sleep as long as he could. So I went and I got in the bath, in the shower, and I labored for, I would say it was about 1:30. I would say that it was about an hour. Yeah, I would say it was about an hour. Within 45 minutes of being in the tub, my contractions went from every 5 minutes, lasting about a minute, to all of the sudden every 2 to 3 minutes, lasting about 30 seconds. And this was the point. This was about 2:30. This change happened about 2:15. I went through several contractions. And by 2:30, I said, Travis, we need to go. This is a change in my labor. This is more frequently. This means stuff's about to start happening. We need to wake up D, drop him off, and we need to go to the birth center. And Travis said, okay. He said, you take care of you. I will handle D. I will meet you in the car. And so my man literally went and got Declan out of his bed, homies in his jammies and his sleep sack and all, and put him in the car. I had already loaded all of the stuff. And it was about 3 a.m. that we get in the car and are headed to drop Declan off. A drive that normally only takes us about 30 minutes took us like 45 minutes to get there because we were hitting every red light. And something in South Korea is they don't have cops that just sit and wait for you in speed traps. They have cameras that check speed. And where Dave and Alexa lived, there were so many of those freaking cameras. So there was no going past the speed limit. And then we kept hitting every red light. And the same thing, if you run one of those red lights with the cameras, like they can take a picture of you and they ticket you. And so we got stopped at every red light. There was road work. We had to go around road work. And so it wasn't until about 4:15 that we dropped Declan off with Dave and Alexa. And poor Decky, to this day, I still feel so guilty. We literally took him out of his car seat and handed him to Dave with his stuff and left, because by that point, when I sat down in the car to leave our house to go, I kid you not, guys, as soon as I sat in that passenger seat to leave, the contractions changed. It went from being something that I was handled fine to way more uncomfortable. And the way I describe how the change happened is I was still very much in control of myself, especially in between. But the nurse in me, there gets to be this glaze in mom's eyes when they're laboring and they're getting to the active labor. And I knew that it was getting intense because I started having to go like this. And if you can't see me while you're listening, you're watching, I'm rolling my neck out. So during the contraction, I was still like calm and collected, but I started rolling my neck. I don't know why I was doing it, but that's just what I was doing. And I felt so much more pressure down low in my pelvis. And as we were driving, it just progressively got so much worse. Again, I was not very loud. I think the most noise I made was I got to a point where I did a low, like, ooh, but Declan was in the car. So I was not about to do anything that was going to traumatize or affect him. So I was still very much in control during and in between the contractions. But I did tell Travis, and when we were texting Dave and Alexa, told them, I don't think we have time to come up and get Declan settled. I think we have to just give him to you and go. And so when we dropped Declan off, we literally just handed him to Dave and all of his stuff and said goodbye, which made me sick to my stomach. And I just wanted to cry. And then we left. And as soon as we had dropped Declan off, there was a switch that flipped in my body. It was one of those moments where you realize how powerful a mother's love and protective instinct for her child can be, because it was as if my whole body just relaxed and everything started happening really fast because Declan was gone. I wasn't worried about him anymore. And my body just knew, okay, we're good. So I could not sit in the front seat of the car anymore. We drive here in Korea a Kia Sorento. There's 3 rows. There's the front, the middle, and then you have the back that can be a row or trunk space. So we could use it as trunk space. And I went from the front row and climbed from the front seat to the middle row. So I'm standing in between the 2 car seats at this point during my contractions. And I'm just kind of like rocking back and forth because I was so uncomfortable sitting down. And I told Travis, as soon as I had to move back there, I said, babe, I don't think we're going to make it to the hospital. And he said, baby, you're doing so good. Baby, you're doing so good. No, we're going to make it. You're doing okay. We're going to make it. Call Karen, call your doula. And so I called my doula. And I think it was maybe 3 or 4 contractions in that middle row. And I called Karen. And I remember I was talking to my doula on the phone. And I said, I don't think we're going to make it. This feels an awful lot like what I imagine transitioning to feel like based off of my experience as a labor and delivery nurse and seeing a ton of women go through it. And my doula was being very encouraging. She was very calm. And she said, okay, she said, it's okay. You're doing such a good job, Leah. Is there any way you can lay down? Is there any way you can, lay down or get on your hands and knees to help make you more comfortable? Just stay on the phone with me. I'm here for you. We will talk through this. Travis, at this point, even before we dropped Declan off, we were like, forget the red light cameras. We don't even care. Korea, give me all the tickets. And we had started speeding even before we dropped Declan off because how long it had taken. And then at this point, Travis is like really not, doesn't care at all. And homie's just going. Homie has his hazards on and is just going as fast as he can. And there was a point where it went from feeling pressure in my front to pressure in my back. Not my back, my butt. And when people say that when you're transitioning and it's time to have a baby, you feel like you need to have a bowel movement, it is the most true description I've ever. I went from feeling pressure in my front to all of a sudden like I was going to crap myself. And that's when I was telling Karen, I don't think we're going to make it because I started feeling that. And I knew the nurse in me knew that means that this baby is getting like it's about to come out. So I climbed. We had started off in the passenger seat. I was in the middle row. Then I climbed from the middle row over that set of seats of the 2 car seats into the back trunk space of the Kia Sorento. And I tried to lay down on my side, like my doula had recommended. And the next contraction came, and I was like, oh, heck no, I can't do this. And I got on my hands and knees. And in that same contraction, I said, oh my God, she's coming. And I was on my hands and knees, and I had no control over it. I remember being there and I just had to push. And I started pushing and my water broke in that moment. And then I felt her head come out. And I remember turning over. I had been on my hands and knees and I turned over to where I was kind of like semi-sitting to pull her out. Because I didn't want her to fall on the car floor. But again, I don't know if this is a mom instinct or if this is the nurse in me having delivered babies before, knowing what to do, that I knew babies will come out on their own, but that, you pull down and up. And so I remember turning over and pulling down and up. She did have her umbilical cord around her neck and I had to unwrap that. Which again, I knew and recognized because of being a nurse. And I remember there was a moment where I was like panicky because I thought that she was stuck because she wasn't coming the rest of the way out. And that's why I had turned from my hands and my knees to that sitting position. No, I had been on my hands and my knees. And then after I felt her head, I had turned into this semi-sitting position and was trying to pull her out. But she wouldn't come out the rest of the way. And I knew the nurse in me that hands and knees is the best position to deliver on. And so I had flipped back on to my hands and knees and basically pulled her out from that point. And I remember that she had her umbilical cord wrapped around her neck, which is what's called a nuchal. And I had to reduce that before she would come the rest of the way out. And yeah. And then I flipped over into a semi-sitting position and I had felt that her head was out and I said, there's a head. And Travis will tell you this is one of the stark things he remembers is me saying there's a head. And I remember her umbilical cord was wrapped around her neck. And so I had to reduce it, which is called a nuchal. And the nurse in me recognized and knew that. And so I fixed that. But then this all happened so freaking fast that it's so hard to even remember it now. But I remember she wouldn't come out the rest of the way. And I thought it was the way I was sitting. And I had a brief moment where I was, a little panicky. And so I flipped back onto my hands and knees and pulled her the rest of the way out. And at this time, when Travis had heard me say there's a head, Travis went to pull over because the whole time I had been telling him to just keep driving, just keep driving. And he had pulled over and stopped and ran around the back. And I vividly remember him opening the back of the Sorrento, and I am there on my knees holding Ella. And Travis is saying, what do I do? What do I need to do? How do I help you? And I had just told him, give me your shirt, because my everything was soaked from labor. And so I stimulated Ella with his shirt and got her to cry. And then I wrapped her up in that. And then everyone was on the phone still. And they were like, Leah, are you okay? Leah, is she crying? And I said, yes, I'm okay. Yes, she's crying. They asked how my heart rate was, how my bleeding was, and everything was normal. And thankfully, I knew enough to know like the baseline of what normal is because of the nurse and me. Um, and they said, okay, Travis, get back in the car and keep driving. And also at this time, one of my midwives had she was like right behind us on the interstate because she had been on her way to the birth center that I was delivering at. And she's like, I'm right here. If you guys need anything, if you need to stop, you let me know. We will pull over, whatever. So we just hightailed it the rest of the way to the birth center. I remember reflecting on the labor before Ella came, before I go to the afterbirth stuff. I remember there was this point when I was sitting in that middle row in between the car seats still, when I just started feeling the pressure and in my head was thinking this is what transition feels like. There was truly a point of terror for me. And this is something that is me being totally transparent and vulnerable with you guys. This is something that a lot of people have joked about, and about the fact that I am a labor nurse, and if anyone could deliver their own baby, I could deliver my own baby. And I've gone along with it sometimes, just kind of like as a defense mechanism, block it out. But I remember in that moment there was this point of terror because this was not what I wanted. Delivering a baby in the back of a car, delivering my own baby, was not what I wanted. And the feeling of being utterly alone, it was just me and Travis. But even in that moment in the back of the car, like, it was just me, because Travis was doing the best he could to his ability to take care of me, to get me where we needed to go, to where I could have people to help me. And I just want to sit on that moment of terror that I felt for a second, because that's just not what I wanted. And that is something that even today I still am processing, especially being pregnant again and gonna go through labor again in a couple months. And yeah, I just want to vocalize that, because I do think that sometimes when it comes to our fears and even just some hurts that we walk through when it comes to some of these birth stories, because everything ends up okay, we don't really sit and truly acknowledge and dwell on the hard and the scary. We just are like, oh, you have a healthy baby, you should be thankful. But really, that was really hard for me. So, anywho, we had kept going. Let me tell y'all, the cramps after birth for the placenta coming out while I was laying in the back of that freaking car to get to the hospital was the most uncomfortable pain. I feel like that when I look back on it. Sorry, I was yawning. I feel like that when I look back on it was the most uncomfortable part of my labor. Not even Ella being born was as uncomfortable as that was. So we then got to the hospital, and when we got to the hospital, they had a wheelchair for me. The midwives were there. They delivered my placenta. And I remember in this moment, and I hope Travis doesn't kill me for saying this, when we got there and my midwife Diana walked up to him and she just hugged him, and he came around the back of the car to me, he just broke down and started sobbing on me because of how scary the experience had been for him and how helpless he himself had felt in that experience. But he has always been my guy who is so good at keeping it together in the moment when it needs to be kept together. And just the gravity of like what we had gone through in that moment, I realized it, especially for him, when he came out and he just lost it. And they took me to my room, and then we recovered. We stayed one night. They said we could have left that day, but I wanted one night to just recover from the rodeo that was my birth. Ella ended up being totally fine. She was 7 pounds, 2 ounces at birth, which is 13 ounces smaller than Declan was, but about the same weight. And yeah, she has ever since just had her own personality and her own way of being. And that is how she came into the world. So if any of you guys need to convince friends or family to come stay with you, especially if you're military, when you're going into labor, feel free to share with them my birth story to convince them as to why it's important that they need to be there for you so you don't end up like I did. I feel like that's all of the details when it comes to my birth story. Ella's great. I'm actually now considering a home birth for baby number 3, so stay tuned to see how that goes because I am, to be honest, low-key terrified to have to drive somewhere to have a baby again. And it's really ironic because anyone who knows me as a nurse, I used to throw so much shade on home births because of how dangerous I thought they were. But now my mindset has totally shifted because I honestly don't think that it's more dangerous than what I did in the back of the car, mentally, emotionally, and physically. I think that that car birth was way more dangerous and unsafe than a controlled birth at home would be. So it's actually something I'm considering now for baby number 3 instead of having to drive somewhere. So stay tuned and I'll let you guys know about that. But thank you so much for tuning in and letting me share with you how my Ella girl came into the world. She is 15 months old today at the time of filming this episode, and she's such a sweet treat, and she's just such a blessing to us, and she loves her brother, she loves her daddy, she loves her mommy. She's so much fun. I'm so thankful for her. And if you enjoy listening to Momtroversial, please give us a 5-star rating on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. And if you want to go the extra mile for any podcast you listen to, not just ours, go ahead and drop a comment in the comments below. This is instrumental for getting our stuff pushed and seen by more faces, more friends to be able to join the Momtroversial tribe and have more unfiltered real talk. And otherwise, if you have any questions, just follow us on Instagram at Momtroversial Podcast. And until next time, keep it Momtroversial. Bye.